First warm day of March. You step outside, and something shifts before you can name it. Energy arrives. The mood lifts. The body responds to the sunlight as if it had been waiting for months. It had been waiting for months. The photochemistry that was suspended since November just resumed. Two previous discussions described what sunlight does. Inside your skin, the epidermal and dermal chemistry, the deep tissue mechanism, the bands, the depths. This is about why the photochemistry was suspended not by winter, but by a century-long reversal in the relationship between your species and its star. Strongest clue that something went wrong with the sun avoidance message comes from the cancer data, and the data says the opposite of what the message predicts. Outdoor workers get less melanoma than indoor workers, a finding confirmed across meta-analytic reviews by Gandini and colleagues, and it is counterintuitive until the dose pattern is examined. Outdoor workers, farmers, construction crews, gardeners, postal carriers, receive chronic, moderate, suberythemal contact throughout the working year. The skin responds to this pattern by increasing melanin production, thickening the epidermis, and upregulating the DNA repair enzymes that correct the lesions the epidermal band produces. The skin adapts to the signal. The repair systems train. The threshold for damage rises because the repair capacity rises with it. Indoor workers receive the opposite pattern. Zero exposure for weeks or months, the skin's adaptive systems dormant, the melanin at baseline, the repair enzymes at resting capacity. Then 2 weeks in strong sun on a beach holiday, intense radiation on skin that has no adaptive protection. The repair systems, untrained and understaffed, are overwhelmed. The DNA lesions accumulate faster than the enzymes can correct them. The mutations that drive melanoma form during exactly this pattern, the intermittent high-dose exposure that bypasses the training the chronic pattern would have provided. Melanoma risk is from the pattern, not from the total dose. The gardener who works outside every day accumulates more total lifetime exposure than the office worker who takes one beach holiday per year, but the gardener's skin has trained its repair systems through daily moderate challenge. While the office worker's skin faces the holiday sun with no preparation, the gardener is in the lower risk pattern. The office worker is in the higher risk pattern. More total sun, less cancer, less total sun, more cancer. The paradox resolves when the pattern is the variable rather than the total. Pattern distinction applies within a single body. The areas of skin that receive chronic moderate contact, face, forearms, hands in people who work outside, develop fewer melanomas than the areas that receive intermittent intense radiation, the trunk, the upper back, the legs in people who sunbathe occasionally, melanoma clusters on the body parts that are normally covered and occasionally bared, not on the body parts that receive daily sun. The skin that is trained by chronic exposure is the skin that is protected. The skin that is alternately shielded and overwhelmed is the skin at risk. This distinction, chronic moderate versus intermittent intense, is the distinction the public health message failed to make. The message was avoid sun. The message should have been avoid sunburn. The first eliminates the training that protects against the second. Someone who follows the avoidance message, perfectly minimal sun exposure year-round, arrives at their summer holiday with untrained skin and maximum vulnerability to the intense exposure the holiday delivers. The avoidance message, intended to prevent cancer, may have increased the risk of the most dangerous form of skin cancer by eliminating the chronic moderate contact that trains the repair systems to handle acute challenge. Well, how did the message get here? Because the reversal from sun is medicine to sun is cancer happened within living memory, and the history explains why the correction is so difficult. In 1903, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded to Niels Finsen for treating lupus vulgaris, a form of tuberculosis affecting the skin with concentrated light. Finsen built devices that focus sunlight onto infected tissue, and the infections cleared. The Nobel Committee recognized the work as a breakthrough in medical therapeutics. Sun exposure was medicine. The award said so. Through the 1920s and 30s, heliotherapy, deliberate, prescribed sun exposure, was mainstream medical practice. Tuberculosis sanatoria positioned patients in direct sunlight on open-air terraces. The treatment protocol was specific, graduated exposure, starting with minutes and building to hours, the dose calibrated to the patient's skin type and the sun's intensity at the latitude where the sanatorium was located. The dose precision, that the modern avoidance message, lax, was present in the heliotherapy protocols of a century ago, the practitioners understood that the dose mattered even without understanding the wavelength physics that explained why. Rickets, the bone-softening disease caused by the deficiency the first band's photochemistry prevents, was treated with sun exposure before the molecule it produced was identified or synthesized. Hospitals built solaria, glass-free sunrooms, where patients could receive unfiltered exposure as part of their treatment protocol. Architects designed buildings to maximize sunlight penetration into wards and recovery rooms. The medical consensus was that sunlight healed. The built environment reflected the consensus. Florence Nightingale had advocated for sunlit wards 60 years earlier, in the 1850s, based on observation. Patients in sunny wards recovered faster than patients in dark ones. She did not know the mechanism, she knew the outcome. The outcome was real. The mechanism: wound healing accelerated by the second band's vasodilation, improving blood flow to healing tissue, and the deep tissue energy production supporting cellular repair, would not be identified for another 150 years. Modern hospital architecture has moved in the opposite direction. Sealed windows, artificial lighting, climate-controlled environments that block every band. The patients receiving the least sunlight are the patients whose healing, immune function, and mood would benefit most from receiving it. Reversal began in the 1970s. The ozone layer, the atmospheric shield that absorbs the most damaging short-wavelength radiation before it reaches the ground, was discovered to be thinning. Chlorofluorocarbons from refrigerants and aerosol sprays were destroying the ozone molecules that filtered the radiation. The thinning meant more of the first band reaching ground level. Skin cancer rates were rising. The causal chain was legitimate. More first-band radiation reaching the skin meant more DNA damage, meant more cancer risk. Public health response was categorical. Avoid sun, apply sunscreen, cover up. Stay inside during peak hours. The response did not distinguish between the 10 minutes that produces benefit and the 4 hours that produces damage. It did not distinguish between the first band, which carries the DNA damage risk, and the second and third bands, which carry no cancer risk at all. It treated sunlight as a single entity to be avoided, when sunlight is a spectrum containing 3 independent signals with 3 independent risk profiles. The epidermal wavelength carries dose-dependent risk. The second carries no documented cancer risk. The third carries no documented cancer risk. The categorical message avoided all 3 to address the risk of one. And then the consequences accumulated across decades. Population-wide deficiency in the molecule the first band produces became epidemic in northern latitude countries. The conditions the molecule protects against: bone loss, immune dysfunction, mood disorders, cardiovascular disease, rose in parallel with the deficiency. Supplementation trials attempted to replace the molecule orally. The trials did not replicate the mortality benefit that outdoor time provides, suggesting the outdoor advantage involves mechanisms the supplement does not contain. Prior discussions identified 2 candidates: the second band's blood pressure reduction and the cellular energy improvement. Neither can be delivered in a pill. Both require skin exposed to unfiltered sunlight. Cultural reversal took 70 years. Nobel Prize in 1903 for treating disease with light. Categorical avoidance message by the 1980s. The reversal removed the photochemistry before the science had fully identified what it contained. The correction now underway in dermatology and public health research is not ignore the cancer risk. The correction is dose specificity, brief subarachnoid. Regular exposure provides photochemistry, no supplement replicates. While prolonged, burn-producing exposure carries the cancer risk, the avoidance message was designed to prevent. The message needed a dose. It got a binary. The binary removed the exposure. The exposure turned out to contain more than the binary accounted for. That binary, sun is safe, collapsed into sun is dangerous within 1 century. A Nobel Prize for light therapy reversed into a categorical avoidance message. Within 70 years is the reversal. I could not see as incomplete until the dose research exposed what the binary had removed. Now what filled the gap the avoidance message created? Because an industry grew inside that gap. Red light therapy, the panels, the masks, the handheld devices marketed for skin rejuvenation, wound healing, pain reduction, and mood improvement delivers the third band in isolation. The mechanism is real. The prior infrared discussion described the physics. Near-infrared photons knocking the molecular brake off the terminal enzyme, restoring full energy output. The devices replicate this mechanism. They work. Irony is what the devices cannot deliver. No red light panel produces the first band's epidermal conversion. No panel produces the second band's dermal release. The devices sell a single band for the price of a medical device, $300 to several $1,000s for a panel that delivers a fraction of what 10 minutes of outdoor exposure provides, alongside additional pathways. The panel cannot replicate. Industry exists in the gap between the public health message and the physiology. The message said avoid sun. The physiology requires sun. The industry said buy this device, delivering one component of the signal through a product that carries no cancer risk framing because it contains no cancer risk wavelength. The marketing positions the device as a technology solution to a problem the sun already solves. The device on the nightstand delivers what the door 10 feet away provides for free minus 2 of the 3 mechanisms. Red light panel is not a scam. The mechanism is documented. The benefit for wound healing and inflammation reduction is supported by Hamblin's research. The critique is proportional. The device delivers one band. The sun delivers all bands. The device costs money. The sun costs a decision about where to sit. Someone who owns a red light panel and avoids outdoor sun exposure is paying for a fraction while declining the complete version. Marketing reveals the gap the industry occupies. Red light therapy advertisements promise improved skin quality, reduced joint pain, better sleep, enhanced mood, and increased energy. Each claim maps to a mechanism. The sun provides skin quality through the dermal pathway, joint pain through the deep tissue pathway the prior infrared discussion described, sleep through the circadian input, mood through the combined dermal and retinal effects, energy through the mitochondrial efficiency improvement. The advertisements are accurate about the benefits. They are misleading about the exclusivity, positioning the device as the source of benefits that outdoor exposure provides more completely and for free. Annual cost of daily outdoor sun exposure is $0. The annual cost of the clothing change required to expose forearms and face at midday is $0. The device solves a problem that does not require a device unless the user has internalized the avoidance message so completely that stepping outside without sunscreen for 10 minutes feels risky rather than beneficial. The avoidance message created the customer. The industry serves the customer the avoidance created. You now know what the message removed and what the industry sold back. The question changes from what was lost to what still reaches you, and through what. Glass determines which bands reach you, and what stands between you and the sun is more varied than most people realize. Standard panes block the first band entirely and most of the second. It transmits the third. Indoor sunlight provides deep tissue activation, but neither the epidermal conversion the first discussion described, nor the dermal release the second discussion described. Sitting by a window delivers one mechanism out of 3. Car windshields laminated safety glass block even more aggressively. Nearly all radiation below 400 nanometers is absorbed. An hour of driving with your arm in the sun provides the third band alone. Airplane windows polycarbonate block virtually everything below 400 nanometers. A 6-hour flight at 11,000 meters, where the thinner atmosphere allows more of every band to reach the aircraft, delivers 0 of the first 2 bands through the cabin window. The pilot, whose cockpit receives an identical filtered spectrum for thousands of hours across a career, accumulates a specific deficit that ground-based workers of equivalent outdoor time habits do not. The passengers assume they are in the sun because the cabin is bright. The brightness is visible light. The photochemistry requires wavelengths the polycarbonate absorbs. A long-haul pilot who flies daytime routes for 20 years has spent more hours in bright light than almost any outdoor worker and received less photochemical benefit than a gardener who works 2 hours a day. The brightness was real. The photochemistry was absent. The polycarbonate removed it. Office building orientation determines which employees receive direct exposure during breaks, and the architectural accident is rarely noticed. A building with a south-facing entrance provides direct midday sun to employees who step outside for 10 minutes at lunch. A north-facing entrance provides shade. The employee who walks to the south side receives all bands. The employee who sits on the north side bench receives reflected and scattered light, reduced first band, moderate second band, full third band. Architecture distributes the photochemistry unevenly, without anyone designing it to do so. The orientation of a door determines whether a lunch break delivers photochemistry or a pleasant view. No building code accounts for this. No workplace wellness program mentions it. Cloud cover changes the ratio rather than eliminating the signal. Thick cloud blocks 70 to 80% of the shortest wavelength, 40 to 50% of the second, and transmits most of the third. An overcast midday walk still provides substantial benefit from the second and third bands. Environment modifies the dose further. Snow reflects 80% of the first band back toward exposed skin. Altitude increases all bands by approximately 10 to 12% per 1,000 meters. A midday walk at 2,000 meters provides roughly 20% more of every band than an identical walk at sea level. Now, the dual circadian input, because the skin's response to sunlight feeds back to the timing system in a way the prior discussions did not reach. The first sunlight discussion described what light does to your circadian clock through the eyes, blue light-sensitive cells in the retina, signaling the master clock to set the daily rhythm. The skin adds a second input through a completely different pathway. Dermal release from the second band produces a vascular tone pattern that tracks the solar day vasodilation during sun-exposed hours, constriction returning as the signal stops at sunset. The vascular rhythm reinforces the circadian rhythm. The body receives a time input through two tissues, not one, the retina saying it is daytime through photoreceptor activation, the skin saying it is daytime through vascular tone. Indoor living removes the dermal time signal while preserving the retinal one. Light therapy boxes, the standard treatment for seasonal mood disorders, deliver bright light to the eyes. They set the retinal clock. They do not produce dermal release because the light lacks the dermal wavelength at the required intensity, and the light does not reach exposed skin at the areas where the dermal stores are concentrated. The light box addresses one input. Outdoor exposure addresses both. This may explain why outdoor time outperforms light boxes for circadian entrainment in the studies that have compared them. The light box provides the retinal input without the dermal one. Outdoor exposure provides both. Two inputs converging on one timing system produce a more robust signal than one input alone, the retinal input confirmed by the dermal input, the clock receiving corroboration from a second tissue through independent physics. Practical implication if you are over 55 is specific. Seasonal mood disorders are typically treated with 30 minutes of bright light exposure from a light box each morning. The treatment works, the retinal pathway is real, and the circadian resetting is documented. But the treatment addresses one pathway. A 30-minute morning walk outdoors, even in weak winter, sunlight provides the retinal signal through the eyes, plus whatever dermal release the reduced second band can provide, plus the deep tissue activation from the infrared that dominates low-angle winter sun. The walk is not a replacement for the light box in severe seasonal depression. The walk is additive, providing inputs the box cannot deliver through pathways the box cannot reach. Dual input has a further implication for sleep quality that the prior sleep discussions did not address. If the circadian clock uses the dermal vascular rhythm as a confirmatory input alongside the retinal input, then outdoor exposure during the day would produce tighter circadian entrainment, at night the clock running more precisely because it received two daytime confirmation signals rather than one. Tighter entrainment means more predictable sleep onset, more consistent sleep architecture, and more reliable alignment between the circadian program and the sleep schedule. The people who report sleeping better after days spent outdoors may be experiencing the circadian benefit of dual input entrainment, the clock running with higher confidence because both inputs confirmed the solar day. And then spring. Because spring fever is not metaphorical for the audience that has spent a northern winter indoors. From November through February, above the 55th parallel, the epidermal wavelength drops to zero. The second band is reduced. The third is weakened by shorter days. The epidermal conversion, the first discussion described, shuts down entirely for 4 months. The dermal stores are releasing without full replenishment from the second band. The deep tissue activation operates at reduced capacity. Now cumulative deficit compounds across winter months. By March, the stored form of the epidermal product in the blood has dropped to its annual minimum. The dermal reservoir is depleted. The deep tissue energy benefit has been running at reduced capacity. The body has been receiving partial photochemistry for 4 months, and at northern latitudes, The partial signal has been accompanied by shorter days, colder temperatures, and more time indoors behind glass that blocks even the partial exposure that is available. First sustained sunny day of spring produces a physiological response disproportionate to its modest warmth, not because the warmth matters, but because the photochemistry has been suspended since autumn. The body has been waiting for it since November. The energy, the mood elevation, the restlessness, these are not psychological responses to pleasant weather. They are the restoration of signals the body requires and has been missing for months. The 55-year-old who feels alive again on the first warm March day is feeling the dermal release resuming, the epidermal conversion restarting, the deep tissue activation returning to full capacity. The body is responding to the return of a signal it evolved to receive daily and has been denied for a third of the year. Spring response is sharper in people who spent the winter mostly indoors because the deficit is larger, the resumption is more dramatic. The retired adult who walked daily through autumn but retreated indoors when the cold arrived experiences a steeper return than someone who maintained outdoor time through winter. The relief correlates with the depth of the withdrawal. The deeper the deficit, the more pronounced the restoration. This is why the first genuinely sunny weekend of spring produces a population-level mood shift visible in emergency department data, retail spending, and social behavior, the collective resumption of suspended photochemistry across millions of people simultaneously. Parks fill. Cafe terraces overflow. Children appear on streets that were empty for months. The behavior looks like a response to pleasant weather. The physiology suggests a response to a restored input. Pattern worsens with age because outdoor time declines as the signal becomes more needed. At 25, outdoor time is abundant walking, sports, socializing outside. At 45, it begins declining, more driving, more indoor work, more screen time. At 65, outdoor time may drop to minutes per day, especially in climates with harsh winters, in urban environments without accessible green space, or with mobility limitations. The decline in outdoor time parallels the decline in the skin's conversion efficiency, the exposure decreasing as the machinery becomes less efficient. Both curves dropping simultaneously produces a deficit that neither change alone would create. Winter compounds the deficit specifically for retired adults, because the schedule no longer forces outdoor transitions. The working adult walks to a car, crosses a parking lot, moves between buildings, accumulating incidental outdoor exposure that provides partial signal. The retired adult who drives to indoor appointments, shops in enclosed spaces, and watches television through a window may receive zero unfiltered exposure for days at a time. The deficit is not chosen. The built environment funnels movement through indoor corridors that block every band. And then clothing coverage has increased dramatically across the last century, removing the signal the skin evolved to receive. Photographs from the 1920s show workers with exposed arms, necks, and faces through most of the working day. Modern outdoor time often involves long sleeves, hats, and sunscreen applied to every exposed surface. Fabric absorbs the first two bands entirely. Only the deepest penetrates lightweight clothing. The total skin area receiving unfiltered sunlight has decreased by an estimated 60 to 80% compared to a century ago. Sunscreen timing reveals a practical distinction the categorical message obscures. Applying sunscreen before leaving the house, the default advice blocks the first two bands from the moment of exposure. Applying sunscreen after 10 minutes of unprotected exposure captures the beneficial photochemistry during the suberythemal period, then provides protection for the remaining time outdoors. The first 10 minutes run the photochemistry. The sunscreen protects against the extended exposure that crosses the damage threshold. The sequence delivers both benefit and protection. The preemptive application delivers protection alone. Dermatologists who study the dose distinction increasingly recommend this sequential approach for brief, daily incidental exposure, not for beach days, not for extended recreation, but for the midday contact that constitutes most people's actual relationship with the sun. If you have had your vitamin D blood level measured, the 25-hydroxy test, now standard in annual blood work for adults over 40, and it was below 30 nanograms per milliliter despite supplementation alone is not maintaining adequate levels. The skin's conversion pathway, even at reduced efficiency after 45, may be the missing input. The blood test becomes the feedback mechanism: measure, expose, supplement, remeasure. The combination of outdoor exposure plus supplementation typically produces higher and more stable levels than supplementation alone, because the skin's pathway responds to demand in a way the supplement's fixed dose cannot. Checking the weather before deciding whether to go outside is making a photochemical decision without recognizing it as one. The overcast day still provides the second and third bands at meaningful intensity. The cold day provides all bands if the sun is present. Temperature has no effect on the chemistry. The decision to stay inside because it is cold or cloudy is a decision to decline a physiological input based on a comfort preference. The photochemistry does not require warmth, it requires photons. The photons arrive through cloud. They arrive through cold air. They do not arrive through walls. The conversion efficiency decline, the first discussion documented 75% between 20 and 70, means the signal matters more at the exact age when outdoor time drops and the machinery slows. If you are retired and spend most of your day indoors, a deliberate 10 to 15-minute outdoor exposure at midday, even sitting on a bench, even standing on a balcony with forearms uncovered, provides all bands at the hour when all are present. The exposure requires only a decision about location, not a commitment to exertion. Uncovered forearms and face, approximately 15% of total body surface area, is sufficient at temperate latitudes during summer midday. In winter, at high latitudes, or with darker skin, exposing more surface area improves conversion. Rolled sleeves to the shoulder, open collar, exposed legs, each add photochemical capacity. The minimum is small. The benefit it provides is not. That architecture, one star producing radiation the skin evolved to receive, an avoidance message that removed the photochemistry before the science identified what the signal contained, an industry that grew inside the gap, selling one band for the price of a medical device, a dose correction that requires not more sun but the dose specificity the original message lacked, and a dual circadian input that indoor light therapy cannot replicate, is the convergence that converted sunlight from a weather preference into a physiological requirement for me. The correction is simple, and it does not require courage, equipment, or a change in schedule. It requires a change in location for 10 minutes at midday. The bench outside the building rather than the chair by the window inside it. The coffee on the step rather than at the counter. The walk around the block rather than the walk to the kitchen. Each choice places you on one side of a boundary that transmits one band and blocks two, and the boundary is architectural, not geographic or economic. A door, a wall, a pane. The full spectrum is on the other side. It has been on the other side every day the sun has risen during your lifetime. The only thing between you and the full spectrum has always been a decision about where to sit. Decision costs nothing. It takes no preparation. It carries no risk at the subarithmal duration the dose research supports. And it provides photochemistry through 3 independent pathways that no supplement, no device, and no indoor alternative can deliver simultaneously. 1 star. The photon arrives. The bond breaks. The hormone enters the blood. The vessel dilates. All of it in the time it takes to drink a coffee outside rather than inside.